I remember the exact second my whole world cracked. One moment I had a future, a family, a plan. The next, it was all ripped away. Not by strangers, by the person who raised me, and the person who swore to love me. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it empties you. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I watched my life, my dreams, my place in my own family disappear. I lost the life I was supposed to live, the wedding I imagined, the trust I built for years. Everyone told me to move on, to forgive, to be the bigger person, but they didn't feel what I felt that night. They didn't see what I lost. So I made a different choice. I stayed silent, I disappeared, and I started planning exactly how I'd make them regret it. My name is Sophia. I am 29 years old. Before everything fell apart, I thought of myself as steady. Not exciting, not dramatic, just steady. My days were simple. I woke up early, checked my emails before work, and packed my own lunch. At the office, I was the person people came to when something needed fixing. A delivery gone wrong, a schedule that didn't make sense, two coworkers not speaking to each other. I was the one who quietly sorted it out. At home, it wasn't much different. I was the daughter who didn't argue, the one who remembered birthdays, who helped my mom in the kitchen, who picked up my brother from the mechanic when his car died. My dad liked to say I was sensible. It usually sounded like a compliment, even when it didn't feel like one. I trusted people easily, especially family. In our house, family was everything. That was the sentence my dad repeated when he wanted something done his way. Keep it in the family. Don't embarrass the family. Remember who will always be there for you. I believed him. When I met my fiancé, it felt like I had finally done something for myself that my family also approved of. He was kind in a quiet way, good with my parents, patient with my mom's questions and my dad's opinions. He wasn't flashy or overly romantic, but he was consistent. He showed up when he said he would. He texted me when he got home. He helped my brother with his CV. My cousin liked him too, joked that I had finally picked a good one. I built my trust with him slowly. We had our small fights about money, about how much time he spent at work, about how often we saw his family versus mine, but nothing that ever made me question us. We talked about kids, about maybe getting a small place closer to the city after the wedding, about taking care of my parents when they got older. I trusted my cousin almost as much as I trusted him. She and I grew up together. She knew things about me no one else did. My insecurities, the times I almost left my job, the days I thought I wasn't enough for anyone. We didn't always agree on everything, but she was the one I'd call when something felt too heavy. Looking back, the first warning signs were small, easy to explain away. My dad started getting more involved in our wedding decisions than usual. At first, it was harmless. He wanted to help with the venue, with the guest list, with the seating plan. Then it slowly shifted into questions about whether my fiancé was ambitious enough, whether he could really provide, whether we should delay the wedding until he secured his future. My fiancé brushed it off. He just wants the best for you, he told me. I get it. I'm not offended. But I noticed he started spending more time with my dad alone. They had quick chats that turned into long talks in the living room, with the door almost closed. When I walked in, they'd both fall silent, then change the subject to something simple like sports or work. My cousin began showing up more too. She was always around, but now she was around him more, helping with the guest list, offering to go with him to see venues when I had to work late, sitting next to him at family dinners, leaning in closer than before when she laughed. I told myself I was being paranoid. These were people I loved, people who loved me. Why would I read something ugly into it? The first time I really felt something was off was one evening at my parents' house. We were all sitting in the living room. My cousin and my fiancé were at one end of the sofa, my dad in his armchair. They were talking about some problem at my fiancé's job. My dad said, half joking, "You and her would make a strong team, smart and charming, you'd go far together." They both laughed. My cousin nudged him with her shoulder. I laughed too, but something inside me tightened. After that, my fiancé became harder to reach. He canceled a few of our date nights, saying he was helping your dad with something, or meeting your cousin to check out a hall while you're stuck in meetings. When I asked how it went, he'd give short answers, then change the subject. I didn't push. I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure fiancé. I told myself he was doing all this for us, for the wedding, for our future. The day everything shifted started like any other. I was at work, answering emails, planning the week. He was quieter than usual on text. When I asked if he was okay, he replied, "We need to talk. Can we meet tonight?" My stomach dropped, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe it was about work or the wedding expenses. I left the office early and met him at a cafe we used to go to when we first started dating. He was already there, hands wrapped around a coffee he wasn't drinking. He didn't look up right away when I sat down. I knew, even before he opened his mouth. He said he needed space. He wasn't ready. It wasn't fair to me to keep going when he had doubts. The words came out in careful, rehearsed sentences. I asked if there was someone else. He shook his head too quickly. Said no, of course not, never. It was him, not me. He cared about me, he always would. But this was the right thing. I couldn't feel my hands. My throat burned. I tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. I nodded, because that's what I do when things go wrong. I stay polite. I stay reasonable. I went home and felt like I had left my body somewhere else. My mom cried when I told her. My dad was quiet. Too quiet. He only asked, "Did you tell anyone yet?" Like the important thing was who knew, not what had happened. My cousin came over the next day. She hugged me, said all the right things. "You deserve better." He doesn't know what he lost. Her voice shook slightly, but she didn't meet my eyes for long. Her phone kept lighting up on the table. She kept flipping it over, screen down. A few days later, I went to my parents' house again. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just didn't want to be alone. My mom was in the kitchen. I could hear my dad in the dining room talking on the phone. The door was almost closed. I walked down the hallway, slow, carrying a bag of groceries. I wasn't trying to listen. I just heard my own name. Then I heard my cousin's, then his. My dad's voice was low but firm. He ended it with her like we discussed. Now he can focus on the right match. Your girl and him will be good for the family. We'll make sure he's taken care of. I stopped in the hallway. I couldn't move. On the sideboard, next to the door, my cousin's phone lit up. A message preview flashed on the screen. His name. A heart. Everything went very, very quiet. I stood there so long my arm went numb from holding the grocery bag. My dad's voice kept replaying in my head. He ended it with her, like we discussed. I backed away from the door before it opened, walked straight to the kitchen, put the bag on the counter, and pretended I hadn't heard anything. My mom was chopping onions. She asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. My voice sounded like someone else's. The rest of that day was a blur. I went home early. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to make it make sense. Maybe I misheard. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe he was talking about someone else. I kept trying to find an angle where it wasn't what it sounded like. But once you hear certain words, you can't unhear them. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and went over every conversation, every look, every time my dad had pulled him aside, every time my cousin had helped with the wedding. I kept landing in the same place. They knew. The next morning, I told myself to be brave and ask. I went back to my parents' house under the excuse of picking up some documents. My dad was at the dining table, laptop open, glasses low on his nose. He looked up, surprised to see me. I sat opposite him. My heart was beating too fast. "Who were you talking to yesterday?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He blinked. "Yesterday?" "In the dining room, on the phone." "Oh, just business," he said too quickly. "Nothing important." He didn't look at me. He closed his laptop slowly, like he was hiding something. I watched his hands. They didn't shake. Mine did. That was the first clear betrayal. Not just what he had done, but how easily he lied to my face. After that, the guilt started. Maybe I pushed too hard about the wedding. Maybe I hadn't been enough for him. Maybe my dad was right about him not being ambitious. Maybe my cousin really was a better match. I turned everything inward. If they'd chosen each other, what did that say about me? A week later, I logged into the savings account my parents and I had been contributing to for the wedding. I was canceling vendors, checking what deposits we might get back. A large transfer caught my eye. The date was 2 days before he ended things with me. The description was vague, just a reference number. The amount made my throat close. It was more than I made in several months. Almost the exact amount my dad had once mentioned as a good start for a young couple. The transfer hadn't come from my dad's personal account. It had come from the joint wedding savings account, the one I had been proudly adding to every month. I just stared at the screen. My own money, or at least partly mine, had left that account right before he broke up with me. I printed the statement without really knowing why. My hands left damp marks on the paper. That was the second betrayal, realizing I had helped fund whatever deal they'd made. That night, I tried to talk to my mom. I showed her the statement. Her face went pale for a second, then she looked away. "Your father will sort it out," she said softly. "Sort what out?" My voice cracked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "Sometimes things are done for the family. You'll understand when you have your own children." "So you knew," I whispered. She didn't answer. She just reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. My own mother had watched it happen and stayed quiet. That betrayal sat deeper than the money. The third hit came a few days after that. My cousin left her phone at my parents' house during a visit. My mom asked me to call her to tell her she'd forgotten it. I picked it up, and before I could even press anything, a message popped up on the screen. His name. A heart. "I told her you were just confused back then. She'll be fine. She always is." My chest tightened. I shouldn't have, but I opened the thread. The chat history went back months, long before he ended things with me. Messages complaining about me being too serious, too careful, more like a sister than anything else now. Jokes about how I would land on my feet because I was practical. And worse, screenshots of my own messages to her, where I'd shared my fears and doubts about work, about feeling boring, about worrying I wasn't exciting enough. Little comments from her underneath, turning my confessions into proof that I'd be better off focusing on myself. They had been talking about me like I was a problem to be managed, not a person, planning what to say to me, how to break it in a way that would protect the family story. I put the phone down carefully. My hands were shaking so badly I thought I might drop it. That betrayal wasn't just about them choosing each other. It was about my private fears being used as material in their conversations. The final twist came from outside. At a small family gathering, an aunt pulled me aside. She squeezed my arm gently. "You're very brave," she told me. "Not every girl would admit she wasn't ready for marriage and end it herself. Don't worry, the right man will come." I stared at her. "I ended it?" I asked. My voice sounded flat. "That's what your father said," she replied. "That you wanted to focus on your career, that you didn't want to hold him back." At that moment, I felt something inside me go completely still. Not only had they made a deal behind my back, not only had they used my own savings, not only had my mother stayed silent and my cousin shared my secrets. Now I was the one being painted as the selfish one, the cold one, the girl who had walked away. I smiled tightly at my aunt because I didn't know what else to do. My face did what it always did in public, calm, polite. Inside, it felt like the last piece of ground had given way beneath me. I went home from that gathering without crying. I didn't scream. I didn't confront anyone. On the outside, nothing changed. I smiled when people spoke to me. I answered messages with short, polite replies. I went to work, sat at my desk, sent emails, and joined meetings. I nodded when colleagues said they were so sorry about the breakup. Inside, everything was different. I realized anger was dangerous for me. If I let it out right then, it would come out messy, loud, easy to dismiss as emotional, dramatic, ungrateful. The same people who believed I had ended my own engagement would easily believe I was just not handling it well. So I did the opposite. I went quiet. I started watching. I noticed how my dad avoided being alone with me, how he suddenly became extra affectionate in front of others, patting my shoulder, calling me my strong girl. I noticed how my cousin's eyes flicked away every time I entered a room where she and my mom were talking. I noticed my mom's constant, nervous tidying, as if she could straighten the truth by smoothing out cushions. I stopped filling silences. I let them talk. When my aunt repeated the story about me choosing my career, I just looked at my dad and waited. He didn't correct her. He changed the subject. At night, I began to write. Not long paragraphs, just small facts, in a notebook I kept hidden. The date of the bank transfer, the exact words I heard in the hallway, the messages I saw on my cousin's phone, what my aunt said, what my mother didn't say. It felt almost clinical. I didn't add emotion, just details. I didn't know yet what I would do with it all, but I knew I didn't want to rely on my memory when people started denying things, because I knew they would. One evening, I sat on my bed with my laptop open and pulled up the bank statements again. I downloaded everything and saved it to a private drive. I took photos of the printed statement and emailed them to myself from a new account. I hated myself a little for it. It felt sneaky. Wrong. But then I remembered they had used that same account without telling me. They had taken my trust and turned it into a transaction. Another night, I lay awake thinking about revenge, real revenge. Not the kind in movies, the kind you can actually live with afterward. I thought about calling everyone and telling them the truth in one huge, angry burst. I imagined standing up at a family dinner and listing every lie, every transfer, every message. For a moment, it felt satisfying. Then I saw the other side, my mother's face crumpling, my dad denying everything, my cousin crying, my ex saying I'd misunderstood. The story would become about my outburst, not their betrayal. So I let that fantasy go. I thought about money, about how much control my father had always had over it, about how easily he had moved it around like pieces on a board. I decided quietly that he would never control my money again. I opened a new account at a different bank almost an hour away. I set up a separate automatic transfer from my salary there. I stopped adding to any shared family funds. That was the first small piece of my revenge, removing myself from their systems. The second piece was slower. I started taking on more responsibility at work, not because I suddenly loved my job, but because I realized independence wasn't just emotional, it was practical. I volunteered for projects. I stayed late on purpose, not because I wanted to avoid going home, but because I wanted to build something that no one could say was given to me. I still felt guilty. That was the hardest part. Guilty for snooping, guilty for planning, guilty for wanting them to feel what I had felt. I questioned myself constantly. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe telling the truth would destroy more than it fixed. Maybe keeping the peace, like my mother, was the kinder option. But every time I wavered, something small would remind me. A comment, a look, a new bit of information. Like the day I accidentally overheard my cousin telling my mom she felt bad for him because he was carrying the weight of what happened between us, as if he was the one who had paid a price, as if he hadn't already been paid. That was when it finally clicked for me. They weren't just hiding what they'd done. They were rewriting it. That was the line I couldn't let them cross forever. So I made a decision. My revenge wouldn't be screaming. It wouldn't be ruining anyone's life illegally or hurting them in the way they'd hurt me. My revenge would be simple. I would build a life so separate from them that I owed them nothing. And when the right moment came, when they were most confident in their version of the story, I would tell the truth. Calmly, plainly, with proof. No embellishments, no shouting, just facts, laid out where everyone could see them. If they had turned my life into a transaction, then the least I could do was make sure the final balance was honest. The first time I told the truth out loud, it felt almost boring. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a confrontation. It was my brother sitting across from me at my kitchen table, stirring sugar into his tea. He had come over after work, saying he just wanted to check in. We talked about small things first, his job, my projects, traffic. Then he went quiet. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I nodded. "Did you really end it because you wanted to focus on work?" I looked at him for a long moment. I could see it in his eyes. He didn't fully believe the story he'd been told. He never had my dad's talent for pretending. I got up, took the folder from my drawer, and put it on the table between us. Printed bank statements, screenshots, notes. "No," I said. I didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I just walked him through it. The transfer from the joint account, the date, the call I heard in the hallway, the messages on my cousin's phone, the aunt repeating a story my dad had given her. My brother didn't interrupt much. His hand tightened around his mug. When I finished, he leaned back and stared at the papers. "So he paid him," he said quietly. "With your money too." "Yes. And they lied to everyone." "Yes." He swallowed hard. "And you've just been going along with it?" "I've been letting them talk," I said. "There's a difference." He exhaled, long, slow. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have asked sooner." "You believed what you were told," I said. "Everyone did." That was the first step. No drama, just one person who now knew the full version. After that, things shifted in small ways. My brother stopped leaving my dad alone with his own finances. When he and his girlfriend eventually got engaged, he told me quietly that they were paying for their wedding themselves. "I'm not letting anyone buy decisions for me," he said. He didn't mention our dad, but he didn't have to. The second step happened by accident, or maybe it was just timing. An aunt who liked gossip called me one afternoon. She asked the usual questions, then slid into it. "I heard he moved on. she said carefully. With someone close to the family. Must be awkward for you. I could have pretended I didn't know, but something had changed in me since that talk with my brother. It's only awkward when people believe the wrong story, I said. What do you mean? I didn't leave him, I answered. My father paid him to be with her. Some of that money came from my own savings. I found the transfer. I heard the conversation. I saw the messages. I kept my voice even. No accusation, just information. She went very quiet, then asked a few careful questions. I answered them the same way, fact by fact. At the end, she sighed. You know, he's been telling everyone he's the one who tried to protect you, she murmured. I know, I said. You can believe whoever you want. I didn't ask her to spread it. I didn't tell her not to. But within weeks, I noticed the difference. The way certain relatives looked at my dad had changed. Less admiration, more calculation. The third step came when my cousin's engagement was announced, to him. The family group chat lit up with congratulations and heart emojis. A formal message came from my parents, asking me to be mature and attend. I didn't respond right away. I waited until the next day, then replied to my cousin privately. I won't be attending, I typed. I don't celebrate relationships that were bought with money taken from me without my consent. She replied almost immediately. What are you talking about? Don't start drama. I didn't argue. I simply attached a photo of the bank statement, the transfer highlighted. No comment, no extra words. She read it. The seen notification appeared. Then nothing. Hours later, my mom called. Her voice was strained. You didn't need to send that, she whispered. She asked, I said. I answered. The engagement party went ahead without me. I didn't ask how it was, but slowly I heard things. A cousin mentioning that there had been tension. An uncle saying my dad had lost his touch with money decisions. Someone else hinting that my cousin's friends now kept a slight distance from her fiancé. Not because I'd begged anyone to take my side. I hadn't. I had just stopped protecting the lie. The final quiet shift came when my brother's wedding planning started. My dad assumed he would be at the center of it, like always, offering advice, insisting on vendors, talking about our family image. One evening, my brother and his fiancé invited my parents and me over. My brother cleared his throat. We appreciate everything you've done, he told our dad, but we're handling this ourselves. No joint accounts, no deals, no conditions. My dad's face tightened. You think I'd interfere? My brother met his eyes. I know what happened last time. No shouting. No list of accusations. Just that sentence, left hanging in the room. My dad looked at me then, for the first time in months, really looked. Something flickered in his expression. Annoyance, maybe, or fear. But he didn't argue. He just nodded once, stiffly. That was when I understood. I hadn't destroyed him. I'd just held a mirror up long enough that other people could see for themselves. By the time my brother's wedding came, a few years had passed. My life looked different. I had my own place, a better job, my own savings and my own accounts. I'd learned how to make decisions without asking for anyone's approval. I wasn't rich, but I was steady. I brought someone I trusted as my guest. Someone who knew the whole story and didn't try to fix it. My contact with my parents was careful. Short visits, safe topics. My dad didn't bring up my old engagement. Neither did I. My cousin and her husband were around at family things, but we moved like strangers who knew too much about each other. A week before the wedding, my brother came over. We sat on my sofa. He hesitated, then said, If you want to say something that day, I'm okay with it. I want honesty in my marriage, not myths. I don't want to ruin your wedding, I said. You'd be protecting it, he answered. Do it in your way, or don't, but don't keep carrying it for us. I thought about that for days. I wrote and rewrote sentences in my head. I threw most of them away. At the reception, my dad stood up to speak. He talked about family, sacrifice, how parents sometimes make hard choices for their children's good. People nodded, some smiled, others shifted in their seats. When he sat down, my brother caught my eye and gave a small, almost invisible nod. Then he stood and said, My sister wants to say a few words. I hadn't asked him to do that. He did it anyway. I walked up, hands steady. I didn't look at my dad. I looked at my brother and his new wife. I won't speak long, I said. I just want to wish you both something simple, a marriage where no one else makes secret deals about your future, and no one rewrites your story when it's over." The room went very still. When my engagement ended, I continued, a story was told about me, that I chose my career, that I walked away, that I wasn't ready. That wasn't the truth. The man I was supposed to marry was paid to leave me and choose someone else. Money was taken from a joint account I contributed to. Conversations were had about me without me. My private fears were shared and used as reasons to replace me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look around the room for reactions. I just said it. "I'm not saying this to embarrass anyone," I added. "I'm saying it because lies don't disappear on their own. They sit on top of people and shape how we see them. I won't carry that version of myself anymore, and I won't let it stand next to your marriage as an example of what parents do for their children." I ended there. No names, no accusations pointed like knives, just facts. When I sat down, the silence was heavier than any shout. My dad's face had gone pale. My mom stared at the tablecloth. My cousin's husband couldn't look at me. My cousin's hands trembled on her napkin. People didn't rush to defend them. No one stood up to contradict me. They all knew enough pieces of the story for the truth to click into place. In the weeks after, the consequences unfolded quietly. My dad's word stopped being taken as final in the family. He wasn't asked to manage money for anyone anymore. Relatives started going directly to my brother or handling their own affairs. Invitations to discuss opportunities dried up for him. He'd built his image on being the wise, selfless provider. Once that cracked, there was no way back to what he'd been. My cousin and her husband stayed together, but their place in the family shifted. People were polite, but distant. The easy admiration was gone. There were fewer questions about their lives, fewer invitations to lean on others. When my cousin tried to hint that things were more complicated, no one really wanted to hear it. They'd heard enough. For me, nothing exploded. Nothing dramatic happened. I went back to my job, back to my small apartment with my quiet routines. But something heavy had finally been put down. He had spent my wedding savings to erase me from my own future. In the end, the only thing he truly bought was his own absence from the life I went on to live.